I'm Sean Aylmer, and this is Fear and Greed's Sunday feature interview. I'll be back again tomorrow with another weekday episode of Fear and Greed, the normal mix of business news and interviews that sets you up for a successful day. In the meantime, enjoy our Sunday feature interview. The health and economic challenges of 2020 have been immense. In the months ahead, different businesses will continue to experience challenges in different ways. Some will get into distress, some will thrive, and some won't survive. In Australia, there are few people with more experience in helping businesses through the toughest situations than Mark Mentha. Mark is co-founder and partner of KordaMentha and is regarded as one of the leading business recovery and restructuring experts in the country. Mark, welcome to Fear and Greed.
Good morning, Sean, and good morning to your listeners.
Mark, not all of our listeners would be familiar with your story, how you went from working for a very large firm to starting, owning and running KordaMentha. Can you take us through that sort of 2002, was it, that you started up?
Yes, I started my career, a long way before 2002. I started in 1979 at a global accounting firm called Arthur Andersen. And incidentally, Mark Korda started the year before me in 1978. So we've been working together for over 40 years. But Arthur Andersen was a worldwide partnership, and they were the auditors of Enron. And Enron spectacularly collapsed in 2001 and through to the early parts of 2002, where Arthur Andersen actually collapsed because of its linkages globally. It was a global partnership. So from that collapse, we had a number of choices, and one was to actually join Ernst Young with our fellow partners or go and do something which both Mark and I wanted to pursue. And we were firmly of the view that you could not ring-fence audit risk in the large big four firms as they are called today. So we decided to step out on our own and create KordaMentha in April 2002. And we've been on that journey ever since, so some 18 years. And as I said earlier, we've been working together as a partnership for over 40 years since our early Arthur Andersen days.
And you kicked off with a very high-profile client, which sort of got you going.
Yes, 2001, September 11, the world went into shock, really, with the September 11 terrorist attacks on the World Trade Center. And of course, all of a sudden, aviation assets were being used as terrorist tools, and the global aviation market went into freefall. And Ansett fell into administration on September 12, 2001. And Mark and I, about 8 days after the appointment of the original administrators, were appointed by the Federal Court of Australia to undertake that administration. So from Andersen's collapse to having the Ansett administration was somewhat serendipitous.
18 years on, what do you see the role of KordaMentha to be?
Well, KordaMentha is many things. It's still very much has the ethos of a family business. We're a fiercely independent investment and advisory firm. We don't do audit or tax. And at its simplest, the heart and soul of our brand is the bringing together of our people, this great diversity of intellect and abilities of our people to solve the most complex of problems. And pretty much we're situational experts and industry agnostics. So no matter what the challenge, we're up for it.
So when and how are you normally asked in?
Well, typically, one of the things I should have pointed out a little earlier was that, KordaMentha is a very diverse business other than just restructuring. But when it comes to high-profile insolvencies or restructurings, we're typically asked in by a number of stakeholders. It could be the courts, it could be the financiers, it could be the directors, it could be other stakeholders that have a vested interest in the outcome, such as the unions and employees.
Okay, so moving beyond that more high-profile work that you do, what are the other services and other functions of the business?
Well, we have the KordaMentha business pretty much has insolvency and restructuring as its heritage, but we've now grown to having over 50% of our revenue from non-restructuring or distressed clients. Our service line specialties cover a very broad range of professional services such as forensic, capital and corporate finance, corporate consulting, real estate consulting, and private equity investments.
Now, mostly when you go in, well, most businesses that you go into probably are in some sort of strife. Is that fair to say? That's a kind of a tough environment to walk into.
Most the challenges we walk into can be very, very diverse and very situational. But, we've been famous for our successes in turning around large, complex businesses. But in doing so, we bring to bear all of those skills that we have across the firm, our capital market and M&A skills, our forensic and data capturing capability, our corporate and turnaround capability, and of course, real estate very much forms the basis of, lots of lending and lots of balance sheets. Yep. So, to have that expertise and bring it all together to solve a problem, to solve many problems, is how we structure our business. But the challenge can be many and varied. And as it was in 2001 with aviation assets and those assets plummeting globally, in today's market with COVID and COVID post-recovery, those challenges will present very different ones to the ones that existed in the early 2000s when we were moving into new technologies and companies were actually being valued on revenue or the eyeballs they attracted to a screen rather than profits. Yep. And when you go back to the late 80s and early 90s with the collapse of the stock market and the distresses in global assets, all of those experiences are very different and unique. And even just before I started at Arthur Andersen, you had the global oil crash in the mid-70s. So all of these things have panned out over time, and the most recent before COVID being the global financial crisis, where we had toxic assets all over the world, toxic debt being sold, which undermined the economies of most of the modern Western world.
So currently then, how do you think the next 6 to 12 months will pan out for insolvencies? Keeping in mind, of course, that insolvencies themselves are down, but perhaps that's because of government support.
Yes, the government support has been an absolute godsend for businesses that have faced what many call an unprecedented challenge. But these challenges, as I've just spoken to, arise pretty much every decade and can be cyclical. And we've had SARS before COVID, so businesses have lent their mind to some of these challenges previously. So there is lessons to be learnt. But the other issue before COVID and what companies and businesses have experienced is the fact that not long ago our country was in a severe drought that was quickly followed by bushfires, floods, and set against a backdrop of government spending, which was being withdrawn from the economy, trying to get the budget into the black. So, when COVID came along, the businesses and our economy generally was at, a very vulnerable stage. And the government post-COVID and the unprecedented shutting of borders has stepped in to prop up the economy, to prop up businesses. And the government stimulus has basically brought so much cash and liquidity to the market that, in fact, businesses have been paying off debt. Consumers haven't been spending as much because they just don't have the opportunity for discretionary spending. So a lot of that's been going into savings. And banks are telling us that their deposits are up in some states as much as 20%. And interest offset accounts are actually, running down because this money is being used to pay off debt and make sure that businesses will be more resilient when they come out of COVID. So, but without this government intervention, there is no doubt that we would have had far more insolvencies, far greater unemployment, and the economy, would have been on its knees.
So, Mark, what about the next 6 months?
Well, Sean, we and the economy, businesses face substantial challenges post-COVID. Those challenges will be many and varied, and we look forward to working with our clients to helping them meet that challenge and helping them restructure to a new world post-COVID.
So if you're a company now and you're worried about the future, what should you be doing?
Well, you should be clearly planning for what has occurred in terms of the disruption to your business model. So many businesses have already faced these issues through the earlier part of COVID. Clearly, tourism, hospitality, aviation have all been massively impacted. The fact that we have no population growth, no immigration, no inbound tourism, has placed enormous pressure on companies that have very little or, if any, revenue growth. So managing to come out of COVID, come out of this new world that these businesses now face, will be very challenging depending on where you sit in the cycle. Some businesses have actually prospered. Some disruptors have responded to COVID, which has created new opportunities such as online sales, such as online learning in the education sector. And, these are the things that the economy and the Treasury has to balance out over time, particularly with the RBA, as to making sure that the businesses that are capable of surviving do, that the bad ones will fall away as they normally do, and that there is an environment for disruptors and new players who have adapted to the new world to thrive and flourish.
Now look, back to you. You've done some really high-profile work over the years, starting with Ansett, but through to Tassal, Griffin Coal, Timber Corp. Do you have a favourite?
That's a good question.
Well, something you're proud of, particularly proud of.
Well, when I think back to the early 80s when I did my very first restructuring, it was as equally as important as the larger engagements today are in terms of the ARIAMs, which have just been successfully completed, the buying out of administration of Virgin Airlines for Bain. All of those are incredibly exciting challenges. But I'm reminded, and Mark Korda, both of us are reminded every day, and a lot of our staff too, take a lot of pride when they see a logo on a truck that goes past from a company that we've been involved in restructuring, an advertisement on television, or people meeting and greeting you face to face. And I spent a lot of time in airports, and there is so many alumni of Ansett working for Qantas and Virgin and Rex that they continually come up to you and thank you for getting back all their employee entitlements as long ago as 2002.
That must be a real buzz.
It's humbling in many respects, and it speaks to the success that we as a team at KordaMentha have had over many years. But there is, obviously unique challenges in all of what we do, and I cast my mind back to early days in KordaMentha when we had Ansett. We tried to save the mainline airline, but there were 16 other businesses saved through the restructure of Ansett. And even Rex Airlines today is the combination of Hazelton Airlines and Kendall Airlines, which were Ansett Airlines. So, there was a lot of success out of Ansett, even though the mainline airline unfortunately couldn't get back in the air. Tassal Salmon that you spoke to was a very unique engagement. Tassal is now one of the largest employers in Tasmania. But in 2002, it suffered greatly from El Nino and the warm currents flowing down the east coast of Australia, which extended all the way to Tasmania. And it's hard to think that Tasmania is the closest growing area to the equator for Atlantic salmon. And these currents warmed the water temperatures to about 22 degrees. And salmon don't grow in waters above 16 degrees. So we had to go down and restructure that company, dealing with these warm waters, thinking about how to diversify the growing areas in which we found our fishing grounds, which were mainly in the D'Entrecasteaux Channel, around Bruny Island and off Dover. And we had other conditions we had to cope with, such as cataracts in fish, that because they form in warm waters, amoeba gill disease forms in warm waters. And all of these challenges had to be basically worked through to enable us to save the company. But also, the first time ever in Australian insolvency, we actually bought our largest competitor whilst we were in receivership. And I'll always remember the discussion I had with Bill Short, who's the head of the Australian Workers Union at the time. He said, "What? You want to take a company that's not in receivership into one that is? You want all our employees to transfer?" He said, "Mark, that's going to be a tough sell."
It's a fair question.
But the proof is in the eating, and now Tassal is expanded beyond salmon to prawns and other aquaculture, and it's a wonderful success story. And the CEO is actually an ex-KordaMentha partner in Mark Ryan. So we're very, very proud of that achievement. When you speak to other engagements, I think the biggest impacts are where a business or a company dominates a town's employment, its well-being, where every business has a symbiotic relationship with that company, even the schools, the accommodation. And Arium and the steelworks and mines operated out of Whyalla is a very good case in point. The whole town was dependent upon one business, and to successfully restructure that business with so many different stakeholders at play was a wonderful achievement for our team, and one which we're very, very proud, and the gratitude from the city of Whyalla, both during and after that successful turnaround, has given us a lot of pride.
So what next for Mark Mentha and KordaMentha?
KordaMentha has been going for 18 years. Arthur Andersen went for 90 years. So I think Mark and I like to think that we could surpass that. There'll always be a place for truly independent investment and advisory houses like ours, where you can do great work with great people for great clients. I think if we at KordaMentha continue to invest in our people, continue to operate a self-regulating culture, then I'm very hopeful for our future. As for Mark and me, we'll continue to do the work we love as long as we remain relevant. But we are forever thinking about what's next.
Through all of your different roles, through multiple projects, you've had an exceptional career, and no doubt each situation requires something different from you. Do you prefer a sort of a hands-on approach, leading through others, or a bit of both?
That's a great question, and thank you for asking. I think there's a time and place for both. The key to leadership is knowing when you've got to roll your sleeves up. There is expectation that as the name on the door, you're expected to be at the scene, no matter what that scene is. And the key is to knowing when to do that and when to nuance that, but also how deeply you get involved, and knowing that also by empowering others, you can step back and direct. So I'm a leader that believes strongly that empowerment builds trust. Trust builds a great sense of responsibility and commitment in your people. So that's very much my style.
Business challenges can put a great deal of pressure on both companies and the individuals within them. Now, some of those challenges are chronic. They're always going to be there, or they're just smaller things that keep people up at night. Now, for anyone listening and thinking about their own business challenges, no matter what they are, do you have any tips that might help them avoid future pressure, or if the time has come, how they should share that challenge with an expert?
My best tip would be that business owners, CEOs, boards, management, or even bank managers need to get advice early and be honest with themselves and their advisors about the challenges, about the risks, about the opportunities, particularly in this post-COVID world that their businesses face. Hope has never been a strategy. That is something the head of our corporate business, Chris Martin, talks about all the time. So people can deal with bad news, but they find it much harder to deal with uncertainty. And I think that's what we're seeing play out in this COVID world, because there could be another resurgence. So if you're not thinking about how your business has reacted in the first or second phase, what happens if it comes again? So your mind needs to go to building that resilience, or changing your business model, or changing your supply chain, changing your service offering. All of those things need to be thought about. But good advisors know that terrain. They can predict how those things will play out, as we've been through the 70s and 80s and 90s and the early 2000s, as Mark Korda and I have, and many of our staff. And we can predict those things and rely on that experience and rapidly work through situations towards a better outcome. And we're firm believers that a problem shared is a problem halved, and don't sleep on it would be my advice.
Yeah, great advice. Don't sleep on it. Mark, individually, you have a very strong track record of success. What advice would you give to someone starting a new career or operating their own business?
Well, they're two different things. I'll deal with the career aspect firstly. I think when you're starting out on a career, effort is rewarded. just that it sometimes takes time. So to go fast, you have to, go slow. You just can't jump in a car and go to 100 miles an hour. Tenacity is just as important as talent. You need to listen because it builds strength in others. And you should always remember, business is about people. So they're my golden rules for starting out in a new career. In terms of starting your own business, sort of have my own stone tablet of 10 commandments as such. Again, it captures the fact that fundamentally business is about people. It's why KordaMentha, has had a consulting psychologist in Yvonne Willick from day one, from the very start of KordaMentha, because we understand, business is about people. Secondly, you need to be honest at what you're good at and hire people for what you're not. Thirdly, as Mark Korda and I have proven time and time again, it can be very lonely at the top, if you're a CEO, if you're a business owner, if you're chairman of a board. So 2 people can always do the work of 3 because you can share that problem. You can bring different insights, different inferences from your own experiences over the years. Even the way you're brought up will have a difference in, determining an outcome. So 1 person will only ever do the work of 1. But 2 people can do the work of 3. The other aspect that's absolutely critical is cash or liquidity. Cash, people will think, what's that in a couple of years' time? But liquidity will always be king. And I don't care if you're running a 7-Eleven or BHP, you need good corporate hygiene. You must have up-to-date financials, preferably an integrated model that captures your cash flow, your profit and loss and your balance sheet. You must always know where the mile marker or the kilometre marker is on the road. Something we've touched on slightly. I'm a firm believer, don't sweat the small stuff. Don't stay awake at night worrying about the small stuff. As I said, organisational psychologist in KordaMentha, she's the custodian of our values. So it's very important. Culture is one of the most important things when you start out in business because the behaviour you walk past is the behaviour you tolerate. Number 8 would be, don't be afraid to confront the truth. Penultimately, surround yourself with good people and a good panel of advisors and mentors. Like I said, it can be lonely at the top, and a problem shared is a problem halved. Finally, be bold, be brave, and be responsive.
That's a great set of commandments. We've seen tremendous evolution of community expectations in the past 6 months or so. You've mentioned in the course of this interview bushfires, floods, economic challenges from the pandemic, etc. You've also mentioned that every decade will have its own challenges. Do you think that the expectations of a company to have, articulate and maintain culture have changed in the past 6 months?
I think that culture has held good companies in good stead. Bad culture probably wouldn't have coped that well with this crisis. And, leadership has been key and communication has been key. But equally, we have all these client-facing capabilities at KordaMentha across our real estate, capital, corporate, forensic and restructuring practices. But none of them work without good roads and rails. So the practice management support that we've had through people and culture and our consulting psychologists and others, through marketing, through finance, and especially technology, because technology has come to the fore. I have spent 3 months on Zoom calls and team calls working with Bain Capital in Hong Kong and Sydney and Boston, buying Virgin Airlines without ever stepping foot in the place. So technology has played, an enormous part. But culture and being able to collaborate, being able to communicate, being able to trust your people that are working at home, that have had it dropped on them in a minute, without all the proper training, without all the face-to-face engagement that they would normally get in their daily lives, being able to talk to clients and sell your capability to clients online, rather than in person, is an incredible change to professional services business models, but to most business models. The fact that you can look someone in the eye and not shake their hand, but give them an elbow bump, even changes, the tactile feedback that one gets when meeting stakeholders. So all of this has to play out now as we go forward. And that is fundamentally different to the way we entered, this COVID pandemic. So it is challenging. It will be exciting for many. It'll be fearful for some. So I think having a great culture is like having a foundation upon which everything else is built. So if you are walking past behaviours that you can't tolerate, then now's the time to step on them and shore up your foundations and build your business and build resilience in your organisation.
Yeah, right. It's a fascinating challenge in terms of working with your current team as well as inducting new people and also having people leave the business while trying to pass that culture on. Do you see culture being impacted by having people inducted and exited while working remotely and on site at the moment?
Yeah, it's not only those inducted; it's your current cohort have to basically deal with each other in a different way, but still in the same culture, the same respectful mindset, the same empathy you bring to your clients, and internal relationships are just as important at KordaMentha as external ones. So that's how you build trust. Those people who work in our technology, some of them get to clients, some don't, but they have all internal clients that absolutely rely on them, and particularly in this, post-COVID world. Induction of new employees and how do you ingrain, they come in as an empty test tube and you need to fill them with training and culture and know-how, and this is the way we do things around here in terms of doing the right things. That is, basically an open menu at the moment. We are preparing for inducting our graduates not in the one place. We're going to have to do it online. And we're going to have to formulate new strategies, as every other business will too, on how to best build that culture. But mostly it's about patterns of behaviour, demonstrated patterns of behaviour over a long time will, I think, instill that culture, which in KordaMentha absolutely self-regulates.
Lastly, keeping some balance in your life is vital, and I can imagine that your role takes a great deal of time and attention, and probably always has. How are you managing to keep lively, happy, productive?
It's a great question, and the word balance is often used in the workforce around balanced, work-life balance. And I can honestly say it's never in balance. But I look at it through the lens of three interacting cycles, and I share this with my staff and do with, as we spoke to earlier about, how we induct people. And I talk to them about the way I see happiness and being productive and being, have a sense of vitality. I look at it through the lens of three interacting circles: your body, your mind, and your spirit. And they're never in balance, but they differ in size over your career. Your body is about what I do for me. It's about keeping active and keeping vital. I walk every day, I play golf, I cycle, I tennis, I fish, watch my weight, and I'm getting better. I'm watching my alcohol intake in COVID times. I've discovered non-alcoholic beverages, which you can still have a drink, but not, overindulge. And again, that's come out of COVID. The non-alcoholic drink sector, I think, has had a real boom. I haven't touched alcohol for a month and not missing it. So body is my first circle. And it changed, and it's a different size circle when I'm 20 to when I was 30 to when I was 40 to when I'm 60. My mind is dominated by my work. As discussed, KordaMentha is, incredibly diverse and challenging. So staying on top of things and staying relevant is a must. So my mind is pretty much full-time, around KordaMentha, around our issues, around our clients, around what's happening in the economy, about what's happening in the future in terms of trends, and trying to, be nimble and position our firm and our people to be at the forefront of those challenges. And the spirit circle is about what I do for others. and I'm passionate about mental health and wellbeing. We bring that into the workplace. We bring that into every client engagement. And, I'm very passionate about the KordaMentha family because, that is the ethos of our business. It is a family business. And I'm passionate about my family. I have a beautiful wife, very supportive, of my boys. I have a grandson who's just, basically added a whole new dimension to one's life. And he's 5 years old now and just full of energy. And, I also have a father of 93 years and he lives up on the Murray and I haven't seen him since March, but he tells me I aren't going anywhere anytime soon. So I think, by keeping those circles interacting, and they change. When you're 18, 19, there's more focus on the body than there is on the mind and spirit. When your workload increases and you become a partner, your mind dominates the circles. And as you get older, it's about giving back and about giving to others. So your spirit circle becomes, a bigger part of those three interacting rings. So that's the way I see, my being productive, being happy, being, having a sense of vitality is looking through those three lenses.
A final question. You've had a remarkable career and it continues today. How do you think KordaMentha will handle the challenges ahead?
KordaMentha is often seen as a restructuring and insolvency firm. It's so much more than that today, and we've been able to pivot our business to non-distress situations where we have very large ASX-listed companies, very large government agencies, things like the NBN, ASIC, APRA, the ACCC, all as clients. And I'm very proud of that achievement in being able to pivot that business. But there's something about restructuring and insolvency that always captures the headlines. So we'll always be, known for that. But, we have softened the brand and broadened the capabilities across all challenges that clients face. And if you hang around a lot of, unfortunate, distressed businesses, you sure as heck know what a good one is when you see it. So we spend a lot of time working with very, very good businesses, making sure they prepare for the challenges ahead. And there's none more omnipresent than the post-COVID situation the Australian economy and the world economy faces right now.
Mark, thanks for joining us on Fear and Greed this morning.
Pleasure, Sean.
That was Mark Mentha, co-founder and partner of KordaMentha.